The night had swallowed the forest whole, the moon hanging pale and heavy over the snow-packed road. Sophia's boots crunched softly beneath her as she walked, breath puffing clouds in the freezing air. Her phone had died miles back, and the only sound she heard was the rhythmic hum of the wind pushing through the pines. She wasn't supposed to be here this late, not alone, but sometimes silence was safer than being near people who wanted her quiet. Before we continue, please take a moment to subscribe and let us know where you're watching from by sharing your location in the comments. We truly appreciate your support. Headlights split the darkness behind her. A truck engine rumbled closer, loud and slow, eating up the distance. She turned, hand raised slightly to block the glare. The truck didn't pass. It stopped. The doors opened. 3 figures stepped out, their shadows stretching long and sharp across the snow. Derick Jackson's voice cut through the stillness, low and mocking. "Well, look who we found walking all by herself." Sophia's heart began to hammer. "It's late," she said quietly, forcing calm into her tone. "You should go home." Derick chuckled, breath curling white. "You think you can tell me what to do now?" He took a few steps forward, boots grinding ice. "You talked, Sophia, told people things that weren't yours to tell." "I didn't," she started, but the words froze in her throat as he came closer. His friends hung back, nervous energy flickering between them. She saw it in their eyes, they weren't brave, just following the strongest shadow. Derick's hand shot out, gripping her arm. "You think you're better than me?" His voice was close, too close. She tried to pull away, but he shoved her hard. Her back hit the side of the truck with a hollow thud. The cold bit through her jacket, pain sparking at the base of her skull. "Derick, stop," one of the boys muttered. "We're not, this isn't." "Shut up," Derick snapped without looking. His focus stayed locked on Sophia. "You made me look weak. You think people can talk about me and walk away." "I didn't say anything," Sophia said. She meant it, but truth didn't matter. Derick wasn't here for truth, he was here for power. The first hit came fast, a slap that cracked against her cheek, bright pain exploding across her face. Then another, then his fist. Her knees buckled, the snow breaking her fall. Her gloves scraped against ice as she tried to push herself up. His boot caught her ribs, forcing the breath from her chest in a sound that wasn't quite a scream. The night swallowed it anyway. "You listen now," he said, voice almost playful. His friends shifted uneasily, watching the scene unfold but not stepping in. They looked at the trees, at the sky, anywhere but at her. Sophia coughed, the taste of iron filling her mouth. Her vision blurred. She tried to crawl away, hands trembling, but he grabbed her hair, dragging her backward. "You don't get to crawl away from me," he hissed. His knuckles came down again and again until the snow beneath her turned dark. At some point, the fight went out of her body. Her limbs stopped responding. Her breaths became shallow, uneven. The world grew smaller, just the cold air, the crunch of boots, the dull ache in her bones. When Derick finally stepped back, panting, his knuckles were red. "She's done," he said flatly, wiping his hands on his jeans. "Let's go." Derick, Brett's voice shook. "She's not moving." Derick crouched beside Sophia's body, tilting his head. He pressed 2 fingers to her neck, waited, then smirked. "Barely, let her freeze. No one's coming out here tonight." He stood and looked down at her. "You should have learned when to keep quiet." The truck's doors slammed. The engine roared. Headlights swung across the trees as the vehicle turned, tires spinning over snow and ice. Then they were gone, leaving only the sound of the wind and the faint hum of the forest settling back into silence. Sophia tried to move. Her fingers twitched weakly against the snow, too numb to feel. The cold had seeped deep now, threading through her veins. Her breath came in uneven bursts, the air slicing through her lungs. She wanted to scream, to call for help, but her voice was gone. The pain in her ribs pulsed with every shallow inhale. The road stretched empty in both directions, endless and white. Her body refused to obey her mind's desperate commands. She thought of her mother's small house, the warm kitchen light that always stayed on for her. She thought of the way people looked away when Derick's name came up, how no one wanted trouble. And she thought of the forest, the only place that had ever made her feel seen. Her eyelids grew heavy. The stars above her blurred together, soft halos of light against the black. She wanted to close her eyes just for a second, just to rest. The snow beneath her felt almost gentle now, numbing everything that hurt. Far away, something moved, a crunch of snow that didn't belong to the wind, then another, slow, deliberate. Sophia's eyes fluttered open. Through her fading vision, she saw shapes between the trees, low, sleek forms slipping from the darkness. A dozen yellow lights shimmered in the distance, like candles swaying in the wind. Then 20, then more. Wolves! Her mind stuttered in disbelief. They didn't come this close to the road, not in winter, not like this. The nearest one stepped forward, its paws soundless on the snow. Its eyes caught the moonlight, cold, intelligent, curious. The others fanned out behind it in a silent semicircle, watching her but not approaching. Their breath rose in soft clouds, merging with the mist of her own. Sophia wanted to move, but something deeper told her not to. She wasn't afraid. She couldn't explain it, only that their presence felt more like a heartbeat than a threat. A low, steady rhythm in the silence. The alpha lifted its head slightly, ears twitching. It stood there for a long time, studying her with that ancient stillness as though trying to remember something. Then, from somewhere in the forest, a single howl broke the night. It was long and low, echoing through the trees until it felt like the sky itself was answering. More howls followed, layered and haunting, rolling through the valley. The sound carried far, far enough to reach the edge of town, far enough to stir people from their sleep. Sophia's last breath before the darkness took her came with a faint smile she didn't understand. Somewhere deep in her fading mind, she saw flashes of memory, tiny wolf pups warm in her hands, eyes barely open. A soft whimper, the promise of safety. Then the snow was silent again, except for the wolves. They didn't move closer. They only watched. The sound of the truck faded quickly, swallowed by distance and trees until even the echo was gone. Silence rushed back in to fill the space they left behind. It pressed down on Sophia heavier than the snow beneath her, thick and absolute. She lay where she'd fallen, half on the road, half in the drift at its edge. Blood seeped slowly from a cut along her temple, dark against the white, steaming faintly before the cold began to steal even that warmth. Her chest rose and fell in shallow, uneven motions, each breath a quiet fight she was losing. She tried to move her fingers, nothing happened. The pain was everywhere and nowhere at once, too big to pinpoint, too deep to escape. Her ribs screamed with every inhale, and something sharp flared in her side, making her gasp despite herself. The sound came out thin, barely louder than the wind threading through the pines. Her thoughts drifted, slipping out of order. One moment she was certain she could stand if she just focused hard enough, the next she wasn't sure where she was at all. The road looked unfamiliar now, stretched and warped beneath the moonlight. The trees leaned closer, their branches creaking softly as if whispering among themselves. Her phone. She needed her phone. The thought surfaced with sudden urgency, dragging her back toward consciousness. She forced her head to turn, inch by inch, neck muscles screaming in protest. The world spun, stars streaking across her vision, but she kept going until she saw it. A few feet away, half buried in snow, lay her phone. The screen was shattered into a spiderweb of cracks, dark and lifeless. One corner of the casing was bent inward as if crushed beneath a boot. She reached for it, arm trembling, fingers scraping uselessly against the ice. The distance might as well have been miles. "No," she whispered, though no sound really came out. Her hand fell back into the snow. The effort left her dizzy, breath coming faster now, shallow and panicked. She tried to slow it, but her body wouldn't listen. Each inhale burned colder than the last, the air biting deep into her lungs. The temperature was dropping. She could feel it, a creeping numbness starting at her fingers and toes, spreading inward like a tide she couldn't stop. The snow beneath her no longer felt sharp. It felt dull, almost soft. That scared her more than the pain. She knew this cold. She'd grown up hearing stories, hikers, hunters, people found too late. Hypothermia didn't rush you. It waited. It convinced you everything was fine right up until it wasn't. Her fingers tingled, then went strangely heavy. She tried to clench her fist. It barely moved. A faint shiver rippled through her body, small at first, then stronger, rattling her teeth together. She couldn't tell if it was from the cold or from fear. Time stretched, elastic and unreliable. Seconds felt like minutes. Minutes slipped past unnoticed. The moon crept higher above the tree line, its light cold and indifferent. Sophia drifted somewhere between sleep and waking, her thoughts slow and scattered, like snowflakes caught in a weak current. The cold no longer stabbed. It pressed instead, heavy, dull, wrapping her in a numb stillness that felt dangerously close to peace. Then something changed. The forest shifted. At first, it was only a feeling, a subtle tightening in the air as if the night itself had drawn a breath. The wind stilled. The trees stopped creaking. Even the distant hum of the world seemed to fade, leaving behind a silence too complete to ignore. Sophia's eyes fluttered open. The road was the same, white, empty, stretching into darkness, but the edges of it were different now. The trees no longer felt distant. They loomed closer, darker, their shadows layered and deep. Her vision swam, but she was certain of one thing. She was being watched. A soft crunch of snow came from the tree line, then another. Slow, controlled, not hurried like a person, not clumsy like a deer, whatever it was moved with intention. Sophia tried to turn her head, but her neck refused to cooperate. Her body felt anchored to the ground, heavy and unresponsive. Panic fluttered weakly in her chest, more instinct than thought. From between two pines, a shape stepped forward. It was large, larger than any dog she'd ever seen. Its coat was thick, catching the moonlight in shades of silver and shadow. It paused at the edge of the trees, head low, eyes fixed on her. Yellow eyes. They didn't burn with hunger, they didn't flash with threat. They watched with a stillness so complete it made her breath hitch. Another shape moved beside it, then another. They came silently, one by one, slipping out of the forest as if the trees were releasing them. Wolves, dozens of them. Their paws barely disturbed the snow. Their bodies formed a slow, widening arc around the road. Sophia's heart stuttered. This was how it ended, she thought dimly. Not with pain, not with noise, just the quiet certainty of being claimed by the wild. But the wolves did not rush her. They stopped several feet away, spacing themselves evenly, creating a wide circle that enclosed her without touching her. None of them growled. None bared their teeth. They simply stood there, heads lifted, ears alert, eyes fixed on her small, broken body. The night filled with their presence. Sophia waited for fear to crash over her, for the last spark of panic to ignite. It didn't come. Instead, there was something else, something strange and grounding. A sense of being held not by arms but by awareness. The largest wolf stepped forward. It moved with authority, its size unmistakable even in the dim light. Its fur was darker than the others, nearly black, with streaks of moonlight tracing the powerful lines of its shoulders. It stopped closer than the rest, close enough that Sophia could see the slow rise and fall of its chest, the faint frost gathering on its whiskers. Its eyes met hers. Time seemed to stretch between them. The cold faded to the background. The pain retreated. All that existed was that gaze, steady, ancient, searching. Something stirred deep in Sophia's chest. A memory surfaced, fragile and distant, small shapes wrapped in a blanket, soft whimpers, tiny bodies pressed against her hands as she warmed them by the fire. She couldn't grasp the details, only the feeling, the same quiet weight now settling over her. The wolf lowered its head slightly, not in threat, but in something that felt like recognition. Around them, the other wolves remained still, their attention focused inward, toward the circle they'd formed. The forest beyond them felt farther away now, as if this place had become its own small world, sealed off from everything else. Sophia's breathing slowed. Each breath was shallow but steady. The sharp edge of fear dulled into a quiet awe that made her chest ache in a different way. One of the wolves lifted its muzzle and let out a low sound, not a growl, not a howl. It was a warning without words, a note of presence that vibrated through the cold air. The alpha turned its head slightly, listening, then looked back at Sophia. Its ears twitched. Its stance shifted, placing its body subtly between her and the open road. Guarding. The realization came gently, almost kindly. They weren't here for her blood. They were here for her. The wolves did not move closer. They did not retreat. They held their positions, a living barrier of fur and muscle and intent. The road remained empty beyond them, silent and exposed, while the space around Sophia felt dense and protected. Her eyelids grew heavy again, but this time the pull of darkness felt different, less like falling, more like being carried. Her eyelids grew heavy again, but this time the pull of darkness felt different, less like falling, more like being carried. As consciousness slipped away, the last thing she saw was the alpha wolf lowering itself into the snow, settling in to wait. The others followed, sitting or lying in place, eyes never leaving her. The forest had opened its eyes, and it would not look away. Sophia drifted again, but this time the darkness didn't feel empty. It pulsed with fragments, warmth flickering through the cold, images breaking through the fog like light beneath ice. She was smaller in the memory, lighter. The forest looked different then, less threatening, its edges softened by spring. Snowmelt trickled over rocks and the air smelled of wet earth and pine. She remembered the sound first, a thin, desperate whimper carried on the wind. She'd followed it off the trail, heart pounding, telling herself it was probably nothing. A bird, a fox, something wild that didn't need her. But the sound had come again, weaker this time, tugging at her chest until she couldn't ignore it. She found them beneath a fallen tree, half hidden by brush. Tiny bodies tangled together, their fur matted with blood and mud. Wolf pups, 3 of them. One lay too still, its leg twisted at an angle that made her stomach drop. Another shivered violently, eyes barely open. Sophia had frozen, fear rooting her to the spot. Wolves weren't something you helped. Wolves were something you respected from a distance. She'd looked around, expecting the mother to appear at any second, teeth bared, ready to tear her apart. But the forest stayed quiet. The pups cried again, thin and helpless. Something inside her had shifted then, heavier than fear. She remembered shrugging off her jacket, hands shaking as she wrapped it around them, whispering soft, useless reassurances she wasn't sure they could even hear. "It's okay," she'd murmured, voice barely steady. "I've got you." She remembered carrying them back, one careful step at a time, every snapped twig making her flinch. Her arms had burned by the time she reached the edge of town, but she hadn't stopped. She hadn't let herself think about consequences, only about keeping them warm, alive. Days blurred together after that, long nights on the floor beside a makeshift nest. Warm bottles, gentle hands splinting a tiny leg with more hope than skill. She'd barely slept, listening for every change in their breathing, every small sound that might mean they were slipping away. They'd survived. She remembered the moment she realized it, the way relief had crashed over her so hard she'd laughed and cried at the same time. The pups had grown stronger, louder, more curious. Their eyes followed her when she moved. One had liked to nip at her fingers with blunt little teeth. Another slept pressed against her wrist, heart fluttering fast and sure. She'd known she couldn't keep them. That part had hurt more than she'd expected. She'd taken them back to the forest weeks later, carrying them to the edge of the trees as dawn bled into the sky. She'd set them down, stepping back slowly, heart breaking with every inch of distance. For a long moment, nothing had happened. Then the trees had shifted. A shape had emerged from the shadows, large, gray, watchful, the mother. Sophia had gone still, hands raised, breath caught in her throat. The wolf hadn't attacked. It had stepped forward, sniffed the pups, then lifted its head to look at Sophia. Their eyes had met just like this, just like now, not with fear, not with anger, with something measured and knowing. Sophia had backed away, tears streaking her face, never turning her back until the forest swallowed them all. The memory faded, dissolving into the cold once more. Sophia stirred faintly in the snow, her lashes fluttered. The wolves were still there, she could feel them even without opening her eyes. Their presence pressed against her awareness, solid and unwavering. The alpha wolf stood where it had before, dark against the white ground. It watched her as if watching something precious, something returned. Its ears twitched as she shifted, and it took a single step closer, not toward her body but toward her breath. Recognition settled over the night like falling ash. This wasn't coincidence. This was memory. Sophia's lips parted, a sound slipped free, barely more than air. The wolves heard it anyway. The alpha lowered its head, nose close to her hand, inhaling slowly. The scent of blood, of cold, of her. And something else, something older. The wolves had not come because she was weak. They had come because she was known. Sophia's consciousness flickered, but before it slipped away again, a sense of safety wrapped around her tighter than any blanket she'd ever owned. The forest felt closer now, no longer vast and indifferent. It felt personal. Protective. As her mind sank back into darkness, the wolves adjusted around her, tightening their circle just slightly. The alpha lifted its head and released a low, resonant sound, not a howl, but a promise carried on breath and instinct. She had kept them alive once. Now the forest was keeping her alive. And it would not forget. Sophia surfaced slowly as if rising through deep water. The cold was still there, heavy and unyielding, but something else held it at bay, a presence close enough to feel, steady enough to anchor her drifting thoughts. She opened her eyes. The world came into focus in fragments. Snow, moonlight, dark shapes encircling her like living shadows, her breath caught shallow and weak, but no alarm followed. The wolves were still there, exactly where they had been, their bodies etched in silver and black against the night. And one of them was closer now. The alpha stood a few steps from her, tall and broad, its form unmistakable even among the others. Its fur was darker than the rest, thick and coarse, with streaks of pale frost clinging to its shoulders. Scars traced faint lines beneath the coat, old marks earned and survived. It didn't pace or posture. It simply stood grounded, as if the earth itself had shaped its stance. Sophia tried to move, failed, then let the effort go. Her chest rose with a shallow breath. The wolf watched the motion closely, ears angling forward, eyes narrowing just enough to focus. Their gazes met. Something passed between them, quiet, weighty, impossible to name. The alpha's eyes were not wild in the way she'd always imagined wolves to be. They were calm, ancient. They held the same steady patience as the forest, the same unhurried certainty. Those eyes had seen winters like this one before, had seen loss, survival, return. Sophia felt exposed beneath that gaze, not in fear but in truth. As if there were no barriers left, no lies, no masks, no strength she had to pretend to have. She was broken and bleeding and small, and the wolf saw all of it. And did not turn away. The alpha took a single step forward, then stopped. Snow compressed beneath its paw with a soft, deliberate sound. It lowered its head slightly, bringing its eyes closer to her level, close enough that she could see the fine lines around them, the slow, steady rhythm of its breathing. Her heart thudded weakly in her chest. In another life, another moment, this would have been terror. Every story she'd ever heard told her she should be afraid, that she was prey, that this was the last mistake of her life. But fear didn't come. Instead, a strange warmth spread through her, not in her limbs, not in her skin, but somewhere deeper, in memory, in recognition. I remember, she thought, though she didn't know who the thought was for. The alpha's nose twitched, it leaned closer just enough to inhale the air around her hand. Blood, cold, pain, and beneath it all the faint echo of something familiar. Sophia's fingers twitched, barely a movement at all. The wolf noticed instantly. Its ears flicked forward, attention sharpening. Slowly, carefully, it lowered its head until its breath brushed against her knuckles, warm, damp, alive. She didn't pull away. The contact was brief, almost ceremonial. The alpha straightened again, gaze never leaving her face. Around them, the other wolves shifted subtly, responding to something unspoken. Their positions adjusted, bodies angling inward, tightening the living circle without a sound. A decision had been made. The alpha lifted its head and looked toward the road, scanning the empty stretch where headlights had vanished earlier. Its body placed itself squarely between Sophia and the open space, broad shoulders blocking the path as naturally as a wall. Guarding. Sophia felt tears sting her eyes, hot against the cold. She didn't know why. Gratitude, maybe, or the sudden, crushing realization that something had chosen her when the world had not. Her breathing hitched, a faint sound slipping from her throat. The alpha's head snapped back to her, attention immediate. It took another step closer and then impossibly lowered itself into the snow beside her, not touching, but near enough that its presence wrapped around her like shelter. The ground seemed to settle with it, the night too. The alpha lay still, watchful, eyes never closing. Its tail curled slightly, relaxed but ready. The others mirrored the posture in their own ways, some sitting, some standing, but all alert, all focused. Sophia's vision blurred again, the edges of the world softening. But this time, when darkness crept in, it didn't feel like surrender. It felt like trust. Her eyes closed. The alpha remained awake. Above them, the forest breathed, ancient and knowing. The road stayed empty. The cold pressed in, but it no longer had free rein. Man had passed through this place and brought cruelty with him. Now the wild had answered. And the alpha would not move, not until the girl beneath its watch breathed warmth again, or the night itself was forced to retreat. The night held its breath. Sophia lay motionless, her breaths faint and uneven, the rise of her chest barely visible beneath the crust of frost forming along her jacket. The alpha remained beside her, a dark sentinel against the snow, eyes fixed on the road, the trees, the sky, every direction at once. Then somewhere deep in the forest, a sound broke the silence. It began low and mournful, a single note pulled from the earth itself, not sharp, not angry, a call. The wolf at the far edge of the circle lifted its head, muzzle tilting toward the stars. Its chest expanded and the sound rolled out again, longer this time, stronger. The howl carried through the trees, weaving between trunks, rising and falling like a question asked of the night. The alpha did not move at first, it listened. Sophia stirred faintly at the sound, her brow creasing as if the vibration had reached her bones. Her breath hitched, then steadied again, shallow but present. Another wolf answered. Then another. The forest began to speak. Howls layered over one another, some deep and resonant, others higher and sharp, each voice distinct but bound together by rhythm and intent. The sound wrapped around the clearing, spilling outward in waves, traveling farther than sight, farther than footsteps could reach. The alpha rose slowly to its feet. It lifted its head and joined the chorus. Its howl was different, deeper, commanding, heavy with authority. The moment it sounded, the others adjusted, voices shifting to follow its lead. The forest echoed back, amplifying the call until it felt as though the land itself was responding. Sophia's eyes fluttered open again. She didn't understand the sound, not fully, but she felt it. It vibrated through her chest, through the snow beneath her, through the quiet space where fear had once lived. She wasn't alone. The howls pushed outward, racing across frozen ground and over hills, threading through ravines and open fields. They crossed roads and fences, slipped past sleeping houses and darkened barns. They reached places where human ears stirred uneasily, where dogs lifted their heads and whined softly. Lights flicked on in distant homes. Someone paused at a window, heart pounding for reasons they couldn't name. Somewhere, a phone buzzed to life as a call was placed, not in panic, not yet, but in uneasy curiosity. "Do you hear that?" The wolves did not stop. They called again and again, voices rising, falling, overlapping in a pattern as old as the forest itself. This was not a cry of hunger, not a warning of territory. This was a summons. The alpha stepped closer to Sophia once more, placing itself between her and the road as it howled again, louder now. Its breath steamed in thick clouds, each exhale purposeful. Snow shook from nearby branches as the sound rippled through the trees. Sophia's fingers twitched. The alpha noticed immediately. It lowered its head, releasing a soft, almost imperceptible sound, not a howl but something gentler, reassuring. The other wolves continued their call, maintaining the rhythm, holding the night open. The cold tried to creep back in, but momentum had shifted. Something had changed in the balance of the night. The stillness was gone, replaced by motion and awareness stretching far beyond the clearing. In the distance, an engine turned over. The wolves heard it long before it drew close. The alpha's ears flicked toward the sound, body tensing slightly, ready but unmoved. The howls did not stop. If anything, they sharpened, guiding, pulling, insisting. Sophia slipped back toward darkness, but this time she drifted with the sound wrapping around her like a thread tying her to the world. Each howl seemed to say the same thing, over and over in a language older than words. "Here. She is here. Not finished. Not yet." The forest echoed with it. The road, once empty and forgotten, was no longer invisible. The night carried the message outward, refusing to let it be buried beneath snow and silence. And as the howls continued, rolling through the trees and into the open sky, the balance tipped fully away from cruelty. Help was coming. The wolves had made sure of it. Derick's truck crunched over the thin layer of frost covering the forest road. Headlights pierced the dark, but the snow reflected nothing back. Only shadows waited. He parked a few yards from where he had left her, stepping out with that familiar swagger, a leather glove tightening over the edge of his crowbar. He thought the job was simple: erase the evidence, make sure no one traced this back to him. He had done it before. Tonight, he expected the same. But the forest had changed while he was gone. The air hummed with something unfamiliar, tense. He froze mid-step, noticing the silence first, the kind of silence that swallowed sound whole. No wind, no rustling leaves, no distant howl of an owl, just the quiet, thick and heavy. Then movement, a flash of yellow in the trees, a pair of eyes reflecting his headlights, unmoving, unblinking. He fumbled for his phone, thought about calling one of his friends for backup, then realized it was dead. Shattered, like hers, his throat went dry. Another pair of eyes appeared low in the underbrush. Growls rumbled softly at first, then louder, closer. Derick's grip on the crowbar tightened. "Who's there?" he called, voice sharper than intended. The only answer was a low, menacing growl that vibrated through his chest. A wolf emerged fully from the shadows, larger than any he had imagined, jet-black fur blending seamlessly with the night. Its gaze locked on his, and something in those golden eyes made the blood drain from his face. The alpha. He knew instinctively this wasn't just any animal. It was watching, judging, waiting. Then more appeared, slipping from behind trees, stepping lightly over snow that should have betrayed their presence. 1, 2, 10, too many to count. They formed a wide circle, closing in slowly, deliberately, but never breaking the invisible line. Fangs glinted in the faint light, fur bristling, tails stiff. The growls rose in harmony, a chorus that vibrated through the frozen ground. Panic started at his chest and climbed upward. Step back, he shouted, but the wolves did not retreat, not a single one. Each movement he made was mirrored by theirs, an uncanny synchronicity that made his mind reel. He took a step forward, they advanced. He raised the crowbar, they lowered their heads, growling deeper, more threatening. Every instinct screamed that he had crossed a line. The alpha moved closer to him, silent now, commanding the attention of the others. The wolf's gaze didn't waver, its stance unshakable. Derick's bravado faltered under that weight. He swung the crowbar at nothing, only air, but the motion betrayed him. The alpha's growl deepened, almost a vibration through his bones, warning and promise intertwined. Memories he had tried to suppress flickered unbidden. The girl he had left behind, bleeding and alone. The broken phone, the snow soaking her blood. And now this, nature itself waiting, patient, unyielding. His hands shook, his confidence evaporating. The world he thought he controlled had turned against him. A wolf stepped onto the road, its presence commanding the others to halt. The alpha followed, closing the distance between him and Derick. The glow of its eyes caught in the reflection of his own, and for the first time, fear was sharp, immediate, and undeniable. He realized something chilling: he was the prey now. The growls swelled, a low vibration that seemed to emanate from every tree, every shadow. Snow shifted beneath heavy paws as the circle tightened imperceptibly, herding him back toward the edge of the clearing, toward nowhere he wanted to be. He swung the crowbar again, this time at the alpha, lunging. The wolf didn't flinch. Its growl deepened, reverberating through his skull, warning him without a single tooth sinking into flesh. Derick stumbled, caught by the uneven snow, panic overtaking him. He looked around desperately, realizing there was no escape. Each direction was filled with glowing eyes, every shadow concealing the same unyielding gaze. A final howl erupted from the forest, loud and commanding, reverberating in his chest. The alpha's voice led the chorus. The sound carried far beyond the trees, over hills and valleys, a signal no human could ignore, a reminder that someone, something was awake, watching, and remembered. Derick's knees buckled beneath him. He dropped the crowbar, fell forward onto the frozen ground. The wolves did not advance to kill. They did not need to. Their presence alone shattered him, stripped away every ounce of arrogance and control. He was small. He was alone. And he had crossed a line he would never come back from. The alpha stepped close, its hot breath steaming in the cold night, eyes fixed on his face, unflinching, unrelenting. Derick could only stare, paralyzed, as the truth settled over him like the snow that had already begun to cover the traces of his crime. For the first time, he understood the power he had tried to wield. It belonged to someone else entirely. The wolves stayed, circling and watching until the distant sound of approaching headlights announced that the world of men was drawing near. Their growls softened, but their presence remained. The forest had delivered its message. The balance had shifted. Derick, trembling, shivering, finally realized what he had done. He had returned not as a hunter, but as the hunted. And tonight, the forest and its guardians would not forget. Red and blue lights cut through the dark like knives, bouncing off the snow-laden trees. The distant hum of engines grew closer, crunching over frozen ground, sirens muffled by the dense forest. Derick's eyes darted frantically between the approaching lights and the glowing eyes that still watched him from the tree line. Every instinct screamed to run, but he was already trapped. The wolves didn't move, their growls simmering low, almost pleased, almost satisfied. "Freeze, step away from the clearing," a voice shouted, authoritative and steady. Derick's heart slammed against his ribs. "Police, here," he swallowed hard, his mind racing for lies, excuses, anything. He had been careful, or so he thought. Now, under the forest's gaze, his plans collapsed. The officers emerged from the edge of the road, flashlights cutting arcs through the night. Guns raised, cautious, scanning the darkness. The wolves remained, a living wall, their eyes reflecting every beam of light. They didn't charge, didn't attack, just watched, keeping Derick's terror contained. "Sir," an officer barked, "hands where we can see them." Derick raised his trembling hands, but his bravado was gone. The crowbar lay a few feet away, useless, a remnant of threats that meant nothing here. He opened his mouth to speak, but nothing coherent came out. The cold, the fear, the howls still echoing through the trees, it all combined into a weight crushing his chest. One of the officers moved closer, shining a light across the snow, illuminating the trail of footprints, the blood in the frozen powder, the shattered phone. Derick's mind reeled. Every step, every mark, every piece of evidence he thought he had erased now lay bare. His crimes no longer hidden. "It's all here," the officer muttered, voice tight. "The assault, someone left her out here to die." Derick opened his mouth, trying to spin a story, trying to weave lies the way he always did. It wasn't supposed to, his voice cracked under the weight of inevitability. The forest seemed to lean in, listening. The wolves' growls shifted subtly, low and approving, as if acknowledging that the balance had finally been restored. The alpha stepped slightly forward, body low, eyes fixed on Derick. Its presence was commanding, silent, and he felt the judgment like a physical blow. The circle of wolves did not part. They did not retreat. They had no reason to. They had been waiting for this moment, for him to meet the consequences of his cruelty. One of the officers signaled, nodding to others who moved to secure the scene. They approached carefully, taking in the wolves without fear, recognizing instinctively that these creatures were guardians, not attackers. The howls faded, but the forest still seemed alive, aware, protective. Derick's face twisted in panic. "It's not what it looks like," he shouted, though his words sounded hollow even to him. He was shaking, teeth chattering from cold and fear alike. The wolves' eyes followed him, unwavering. He couldn't escape them, couldn't escape the truth. "Sir," another officer said firmly, "you're under arrest for assault and attempted murder. Anything you say can and will be used against you." He stumbled backward, disbelief contorting his features, his pride shattered. Years of intimidation, of cruelty, of walking over everyone else, had led him here, to kneeling in the snow, surrounded by the silent judgment of the wild and the very law he thought he could outrun. Derick tried to resist, a fleeting reflex, but one glance at the alpha, at the circle of wolves, and he froze. There was no fight left in him. The forest itself seemed to press down, teaching him a lesson far beyond what human authority could enforce. Cruelty had been met with patience, strength, and memory. Nature did not forgive, but it also did not need to speak. It simply remembered. The officers cuffed him, guiding him toward the patrol vehicles. The wolves retreated a step, fading back into the shadows, their work done. Their eyes lingered for a moment, a final silent warning before disappearing completely into the trees. The forest exhaled, settling again into its quiet rhythm, leaving only the sound of engines, the crunch of snow under boots, and the realization that justice had been served in more ways than one. Sophia lay on a stretcher, blankets wrapped around her, paramedics working quickly to restore warmth and life. Her eyes fluttered open as she recognized the faint glow of headlights, the distant shapes of officers, and for the first time in hours she felt the weight of fear lift just slightly. The wolves were gone, but their presence lingered in the cold air, in the way the forest itself seemed to breathe with her survival. Derick was gone from her sight, taken by the law, yet his terror, his humiliation, and his punishment would remain. The forest had ensured that. And Sophia, battered but alive, understood the depth of what had saved her. not just the alpha, not just the pack, but the memory of kindness she had shown years before, reaching back to protect her now in ways no human could. The snow fell softly around the clearing, covering the traces of violence yet preserving the echoes of justice. The forest had witnessed cruelty, and it had responded with the most primal force of all: loyalty, memory, and the unyielding will to protect. And for Sophia, that night became a testament that some debts of the heart, once earned, are never forgotten. Sophia woke to the sterile scent of antiseptic and the quiet hum of hospital machines. The snow, the wolves, the forest, they all felt distant, like fragments of a dream she had barely survived. Bandages wrapped tightly around her ribs, her arm in a sling, bruises coloring her skin in deep purples and blues. Yet despite the pain, there was a warmth rising inside her that had nothing to do with medicine, the knowledge that she had lived, that she had survived. The nurse adjusted her blanket and smiled softly. "You've been through a lot, Sophia, you're safe now." Safe? The word tasted strange on her tongue. For years, she had believed safety was a luxury she didn't deserve, that life meant enduring, quietly, the cruelties of others. But lying here, breathing steadily, she realized survival wasn't about enduring, it was about recognizing that her life mattered, that she mattered. Outside her window, the sun began to rise, painting the snow-covered town in a soft orange glow. Somewhere beyond the trees, she imagined the wolves still moving silently, shadows against the morning light. They were gone from her sight, fading back into the forest, their work complete, yet their presence lingered in the stillness around her, in the pulse of her own heartbeat. They had reminded her that loyalty, memory, and quiet strength could not be destroyed by human cruelty. Her phone was replaced, messages from friends and strangers alike filling her notifications. Words of concern, offers of help, inquiries about her safety. Even the officers who had found her came by, recounting how her courage had been as much a factor in her rescue as the howls that drew them to the forest. Derick Jackson had been arrested, his face pale, eyes wide with disbelief and fear, the consequences of his violence fully catching up to him. He would face justice, but that justice was now framed against the backdrop of a reminder that cruelty, no matter how bold, could not escape reckoning. Sophia closed her eyes for a moment, thinking of the alpha, the massive, jet-black wolf whose gaze had met hers in that frozen clearing. Fenris, she thought, the name she had whispered to herself when the memory of those wolf pups came rushing back. The wolf that had watched over her with the patience of centuries. She imagined him moving through the trees, silent and dignified, disappearing into shadows but leaving behind a lesson etched into her spirit. Kindness never truly dies, and protection can arrive in forms you never expected. Days passed, her strength slowly returning. Each step she took outside the hospital, each breath of cold winter air, was a reminder that the world was both cruel and beautiful, dangerous and loyal. The scars on her body, the bruises fading, were proof of endurance, but the lessons in her heart were proof of transformation. She no longer felt like the frightened girl waiting for life to strike again. She had survived, and survival had changed her. When the snow melted and the forest began to breathe in the soft promise of spring, Sophia returned there cautiously, reverently. She walked the edges of the trees, leaving small offerings near the paths she remembered, whispering thanks into the wind. She didn't see Fenris or the pack, they were gone. But she felt them, in the way the forest rustled around her, in the shadows between trunks, in the quiet, unseen vigilance that seemed to follow her every step. The town slowly returned to normal, the story of the wolves and the assault fading into whispers, some believing, some skeptical. But Sophia didn't need anyone else to understand what had happened. She carried it in her chest, in the memory of being watched, protected, and ultimately saved. That memory was hers, unshakable, a truth that no human cruelty could erase. And in the deepest parts of her mind, she promised herself she would live differently. Speak boldly, protect fiercely, and never again underestimate the power of kindness. Given, remembered, returned. Derick Jackson was behind bars, facing the consequences of his actions, but the real victory was quieter, more profound. It was in the quiet snow of the forest, in the lingering echoes of the wolves' howls, in the knowledge that Sophia had endured and emerged at last whole. The wolves would always be there, somewhere, watching, guarding, remembering. And so would she, carrying the truth that what survives is not always visible, not always celebrated, but it endures quietly, powerfully, and eternally.